Picture this, you and your colleagues have to attend a meeting, but you spot your boss's car on your way there. You park and your colleagues tell you to wait while they see what he's up to. After some time, a bang rings out, and it sounded like a gun. You get out of your car and walk to the building to see what happened. You slowly open the door and peek in. You notice that it's really cold inside as something bumps your foot and you look down. It's your colleague's head. Before you could react, a sound catches your ear. You can hear the tearing of flesh and it horrifies you. You look up to see where the noise is coming from and you see it. A vampire tearing your colleagues to pieces, but worst of all, you notice that it has seen you. Nightlight Hounds, written by Haruhisa Nakata, is a promising new manga about vampires and werewolves and how the gangs they run affect the city the story is set in. You might know Haruhisa Nakata from his previous work Levius, which I covered on this channel. That story is amazing and makes me all the more excited for what he might be able to do with Nightlight Hounds. Now, in this video I'll be talking about the story, mainly the first chapter, then I will talk more in depth about the vampires and werewolves. If you would like to avoid spoilers, then please click off now, but if you don't mind or have already read this manga, then please enjoy the video. When I was still just a kid, life was unpredictable. Humans and non-humans alike were all desperate to find a way to survive. She too was a victim of the times, and we cut to Silent Bay City. We see an owner of a liquor store being harassed by a gang to sell their liquor. They try to convince him with a promise of protection and a gun to the head. They continue to argue as we see them call out to Jimmy, who is the boy waiting outside the store and the main character of our story. The leader hands Jimmy a gun, mentioning he hasn't had his first kill yet. The leader whispers for Jimmy to just scare the man and he'll be part of the family. One of the members shows off the family mark and mentions that he will get it if he listens to him. Jimmy then points the gun at the owner. Jimmy takes a long pause and the owner springs forward and grabs the gun. The leader kills him before he could do anything and belittles Jimmy. When asked what to do, he says hang the body up as a warning. As they leave, the leader passes out everyone's pay. They're excited and Jimmy goes to collect his, but is punched by the leader for messing up. This is Silent Bay City. You end up here, you're here for good. After that we learn more about this city, and after the war it has boomed with tons of innovations, but this has caused a wider gap between the rich and the poor, and young guys like Jimmy are forced to join gangs to survive. Jimmy heads home and his power is cut due to an unpaid bill. He decides to eat on the roof. He notices kids' toys scattered across the roof. As he begins to eat, he sees a boy beside him, but no one's there. When did I get so alone? Jimmy asks himself. He remembers the events of the day and looks down. I'm tired of living, he says as he leans forward, but before he did anything, he hears something and sees a ball roll behind him. He asks if anyone is there, but gets no reply. The ball flies back and he catches it. No one makes themselves known, so he writes, "Who are you?" on the baseball and throws it, but he accidentally throws it off the edge. He gets startled by something behind him and slips. He begins to fall but is grabbed by someone. It's a young girl. She shows him the baseball he threw. He asks her to pull him up, but she doesn't listen and reaches further over the edge to hand him the ball. Jimmy snatches the ball from her and launches it. He holds onto the girl as she jumps, saving them both. He gives her a sandwich and a drink and notices a cut on her hand and patches her up, while asking her about her family, but she just blankly stares back. As they talk, she just vanishes. The next evening, he notices her on the roof again. Jimmy says he was worried after she left yesterday, and the girl hands him a flower as a gift. They spend the evening chatting, and Jimmy mentions that the girl reminds him of his brother. Jimmy talks about how his parents worked themselves to death, and that with no one in the family left, Jimmy began working odd jobs to feed them. One day after work, his brother wasn't home, and he heard about a gang blowing up a shop nearby, and as he ran and pushed people aside, he found his brother dead after the explosion. His brother was out buying Jimmy his favourite sandwich. A member of the Lakeside Fellas, which is the gang Jimmy is a part of, killed the man, and that's what caused Jimmy to become a member. After this, Jimmy gives the girl a name because she doesn't have one, and they pick Lily, which she loves. Lily then notices one of her family members, and Jimmy takes her to him. Jimmy then scolds the man for letting her run the streets at night. The man then hands Jimmy a wad of cash for looking after her, but Jimmy just throws it back and leaves. And now, we are back to where we were during the intro. Jimmy's colleagues see what the boss is up to and get eaten by the vampire. Jimmy flees and tells the police, who are very skeptical, but Jimmy tells them that they can find the body of the shopkeeper that was just killed in the shed. The officers tell him to wait here, and after a while, out walks Jimmy's boss, the vampire. Jimmy gets taken back to the shed, which is where the vampires keep their supply of blood, and we learn that the vampires have paid off the cops. We get our first look at what the vampires look like, and I like the more monstrous appearance. The vampire tells Jimmy that they were going to show him their secret, but he just had to go and rat on them to the cops. Before he kills Jimmy, he asks him if he has any questions. Jimmy asks if everyone in the Lakeside Fellas is a vampire. He tells him that even in the gang, vampires are rare. He mentions that the reason the gangs have formed is because lone vampires were more likely to get caught or accidentally turn someone into a vampire, so they decided to form gangs. While the vampire talked to Jimmy, he cut the ropes with a pocket knife, grabbed a gun and shot the vampire, which actually impressed him. Jimmy shot again and tried to flee, running towards a car. But before he could leave, the vampire slams into the car, wrecking it. We watch the vampire's face heal from the bullet wound. He walks over and morphs his hand into a sharp appendage. "Nice knowing you, Jimmy," the vampire says as it raises his arm. As it goes to strike Jimmy, Jimmy wonders why he doesn't want to die, as after his brother died, he's always thought about it, but he remembers Lily. He thinks that living might not be so bad after meeting her, but remembers she has a family and that no one would care if he was gone. "This is fine. I'm finally free. I'm tired of everything." Jimmy accepts his death and closes his eyes, but his death doesn't come, and when he opens his eyes, he can see that the vampire has stopped and is looking past him. "What the hell are you?" the vampire says, and we see a monstrous creature perched above them, snarling at the vampire. In an instant, the monster kills the vampire, completely disintegrating it in one swift snap of its jaws. It slowly makes its way towards Jimmy. "Ate him already?" someone asks. It's the man who was with Lily. He mentions that questioning him would be no good anyway, and he begins to search the shed. He looks over and sees that Jimmy is still alive. He lights a match into a bag and leaves it in the shed, which causes an explosion. The large monster drops a ball in front of Jimmy, and he asks who they are. Hunters of the Shadows, the Night Hounds. As they leave, the man tells Jimmy that they will meet again. Jimmy passes out, and we see that it's the ball from earlier that says, "Who are you?" On the other side of the ball, we see a reply, "I am Lily," and this is the beginning of how Jimmy gets caught up in a conflict between these monsters. That concludes the first chapter, and I loved it. I was firmly hooked. I just had to see where the story would go, and it became obvious that Lily was the massive monster, so I just had to find out more. Also, sorry if that dragged a bit. The chapter was 90 pages, and I took a bunch out to condense it. In the next part, I will go more in depth on what the vampires and werewolves are, so if you want to avoid more spoilers, I suggest you click off now, but if you don't mind, then let's continue. Now, the highlight of Nightlight Hounds is definitely the vampires and werewolves. In this part, I will now talk about how each impact the story. First, I will start with the vampires. As we know, vampires created the Lakeside Fellas as a way to work together and collect blood, as well as make money like a typical gang through extortion and other violent crimes. The Lakeside Fellas have some interesting characters. Early in chapter 1, we get a reference to the underboss, as some of the Lakeside Fellas grunts find him generous, and it isn't until the next chapter we learn that Dorothea isn't a he, but a she, which in hindsight is kinda obvious from the name. After the events of chapter 1, Jimmy is found by the Lakeside Fellas and is taken directly to Dorothea. Dorothea questions Jimmy on why he was at the shed. Despite them grilling him, he doesn't give up the Night Hound and just mentions that when the vampire chased him, he hit his head and fell unconscious. The vampires aren't happy that he tried to go to the police about them. Dorothea understands why he did what he did and accepts him as an inner member of the Lakeside Fellas, even branding him herself, which is extremely rare. This is how Jimmy became an official member. Dorothea is an interesting character, as in the limited chapters we have seen she has been extremely cold and calculated, which is the opposite of every other vampire we see. We learn that there's two main factions so far, and Dorothea's is aiming to make her the new leader. The other vampire gunning to become the next leader is Leo. Leo is the current leader's nephew and is a large and hyper-aggressive vampire. We haven't seen too much of his faction, but from what we have seen, they are a lot more violent and intimidating than Dorothea's. This panel perfectly shows the difference between the two, as Leo is angry, barely holding in his rage, all while Dorothea is completely calm and in control. I'm excited to see more of their dynamic in the future. The vampires themselves are so interesting, as they aren't like normal vampires. They can walk around during the day. The more monstrous forms they take are also a nice new take on the vampire design. Their blood can regenerate wounds even if given to a human, which we see Dorothea do with Jimmy. This can kill someone if done too much. Another cool feature of the vampires is the way they manipulate their bodies, being able to make their arms sharp or increase muscle mass. I really can't wait to see more of the vampires in future chapters. Now onto the Night Hounds. After Jimmy returns home, the man who was with Lily introduces himself as Kay and tells him to go with him. On their drive, we learn that the Federation has created the Night Hounds to eliminate the vampires. Kay gives Jimmy a brief history on vampires and mentions that they used to live in Europe, but with how hard it's gotten to get blood, they have branched out, and one day, one appeared in Silent Bay City. We learn that the vampires have been gaining too much influence, and that's why the Night Hounds have to get rid of them, as in Kay's words, before they gain enough power to bring humans to their knees. Jimmy then asks if that's why Lily was around him, just to get close to his boss, who was a vampire, and Kay tells him that it was. Jimmy then asks that if this is so top secret, why haven't they killed him? Because Lily seemed lonely, Kay replies, and Jimmy notices that he called her Lily. Kay then takes Jimmy to an abandoned factory, which is the Night Hound's base. Kay takes Jimmy to the basement where Lily is, and tells him not to scare her. As he pulls the sheet away, a large roar startles him, and he sees what Lily is as a towering werewolf in front of him. Kay mentions that she's not quite used to her transformation, and that she's a beast bred to hunt vampires. Jimmy mentions that she looks like she's in pain. This is when we learn one of the saddest things about werewolves, and that they only live for around 10 years. Jimmy is rightfully shocked, and Kay tells him that she was born last year, so she has 9 years left. Jimmy demands that they let her out, and locking her up is cruel. Kay can't do that, as she's the trump card against the vampires. Jimmy then says that he can't help them. He mentions the guilt of losing his brother and can't do that again, so he'd rather not get involved. Kay then pulls a gun and says that he's a member of the Lakeside Fellas, and he will have to be killed. Just do it. I'm tired of threats, Jimmy responds. They're interrupted by Lily scratching, and Kay tells him that she's been practicing ever since she met him. Jimmy asks for something to write with. They begin communicating together in this bittersweet scene. She spells out her own name and then Jimmy's. She then changes back to her human form with tears in her eyes as she sees Jimmy again. Jimmy agrees to help them as long as he can leave the city with Lily when they are done, and Kay says that he thinks he can convince the Federation to let them leave. The werewolves, although we've only seen Lily so far, are much stronger than vampires, being able to take out one extremely easy. They have incredible strength and agility, being able to move around the city at an incredible pace as well as track things for thousands of meters with ease. The shadowy design of the werewolves is awesome and add a much more unnatural vibe to them. Outside of their incredible strength, we don't know what other abilities they have, but I'm sure we will get to see more of it in the future. Their forms also seem really malleable, like they aren't a creature, but that's just the shape their powers take form as. Now we have only met 3 Night Hounds so far, being Kay, Lily, and Roy, who is the Night Hound sniper, but I won't spoil too much about him as he's a newly introduced character. Nightlight Hounds is a phenomenal new manga that I'm extremely excited to keep following, as I know that Haruhisa Nakata is capable of creating amazing stories, and I think he's going to make another with Nightlight Hounds. I hope that in this video I've convinced some of you to try this story. Well, that's it for this video. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!